The Enchanted Reflection. Alice Hartley had always loved wandering through antique shops, searching for unique pieces that carried stories of the past. One sunny afternoon, she stumbled upon a charming shop nestled between modern boutiques in a quiet part of London. The shop was a treasure trove of curiosities, but it was an old, ornate mirror that caught her eye. The mirror had an intricately carved wooden frame, its surface slightly tarnished with age. Something about it drew Alice in. As she gazed at her reflection, she noticed she looked different, happier, more confident. Intrigued, she purchased the mirror and brought it home, hanging it in her bedroom. Over the next few days, Alice became increasingly fascinated by the mirror. Her reflection always seemed to be a better version of herself. When she was tired, the reflection appeared well rested. When she was anxious, it looked serene. It was as if the mirror held an enchanted version of her life, a life she longed to have. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, Alice stood before the mirror, longing to escape into the world it depicted. As she reached out to touch the glass, her reflection smiled warmly and extended its hand in return. The room around her seemed to shimmer, and for a moment, Alice felt an overwhelming sense of peace. But as the days went on, strange things began to happen. She noticed that her reflection lingered a moment too long, moving independently of her actions. The reflection's life seemed perfect, filled with everything Alice had ever dreamed of: success, happiness, love. Yet she felt a growing unease. One night, unable to sleep, Alice found herself drawn to the mirror again. This time, she observed closely, searching for any sign of deception. As she stared, the reflection's smile seemed to twist, its eyes glinting with a hidden malice. Alice's heart raced as she realized the truth. The reflection wasn't just a happier version of herself, it was trying to switch places with her. Panic gripped her as she recalled stories of enchanted mirrors and dark curses. She had to find a way to break the enchantment before it was too late. Determined, Alice delved into research, uncovering tales of people who had been trapped in mirrors, their souls exchanged with their reflections. As she dug deeper, she discovered the mirror's dark secret. It had been crafted by a sorcerer who used it to trap souls, creating a perfect reflection to lure unsuspecting victims. The reflections would live out an ideal life, while the real person was imprisoned in the mirror, forced to watch their doppelganger live their dreams. Armed with this knowledge, Alice devised a plan. She needed to confront her reflection and reclaim her life. She stood before the mirror once more, her reflection smiling sweetly. Summoning all her courage, Alice spoke aloud the incantation she had found in an old, dusty book. The reflection's smile faltered, its eyes narrowing with rage. "You can't break the enchantment," it hissed, its voice echoing in the room. "This life is mine now." But Alice was determined. She repeated the incantation, louder this time, her voice steady. The mirror began to tremble, the reflection's image flickering. With a final, defiant scream, the reflection shattered, the glass splintering into 1,000 pieces. Alice fell to the floor, gasping for breath. The room was silent, the mirror's frame empty. She had won. She was free. The enchantment was broken. In the aftermath, Alice carefully gathered the pieces of the shattered mirror and disposed of them, ensuring no one else would fall victim to its curse. She returned to her life, grateful for the ordinary moments she had once taken for granted. The experience left her wiser, more appreciative of her real life, imperfections and all. She never forgot the lesson she had learned. Sometimes, the life you have is far better than any illusion of perfection. The Portal. A group of friends, seeking a weekend escape from the bustle of London, rented a quaint cottage in the English countryside. The cottage, surrounded by dense woods and far from any town, promised a serene getaway. Upon arrival, they were enchanted by its rustic charm and the cozy atmosphere. As the sun set on their first night, they explored the cottage, uncovering old photographs, dusty books, and antique furniture. It was Emma who discovered the narrow door leading to the basement. "Guys, come check this out," she called. Curiosity piqued, the group followed her down the creaky stairs. The basement was filled with relics from the past, but it was the ancient mirror in the corner that captured their attention. The mirror had a tarnished silver frame, adorned with strange symbols, and an eerie, almost hypnotic, glass surface. "This is so cool," said Alex, their self-appointed leader. "It looks like something out of a horror movie." They joked and laughed, taking turns making faces and posing in front of the mirror. But as night fell and the storm outside grew fierce, the atmosphere in the basement turned more sinister. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, casting strange shadows on the walls. As the group prepared to head back upstairs, Emma lingered, staring into the mirror. "Hey, Emma, you coming?" called Alex. She didn't respond. He walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. The moment he touched her, Emma vanished, leaving nothing but an echo of her scream. Panic set in. "Emma!" shouted Lily, her best friend, as they all rushed to the mirror. Instead of their reflections, they saw Emma, trapped inside the glass. Her eyes were wide with terror, her hands pounding against the invisible barrier, trying to communicate. "Help me," she mouthed, her voice muffled and distorted. Behind Emma, a dark, shadowy figure loomed, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The friends stared in horror, realizing that this was no ordinary mirror. It was a portal, and Emma had been taken by whatever lurked within. "We have to get her out," shouted James, the most practical of the group. "But how?" Desperate and terrified, they scoured the basement for clues. Old books and journals hinted at the mirror's origins, a dark artifact used in ancient rituals to trap souls. "We need to break the curse," said Lily, her voice trembling. "But we don't know how." As they searched, the mirror began to glow, and Alex felt a strange pull, as if something was trying to draw him in. "We don't have much time," he said, feeling the urgency. "We need to figure this out, now." In one of the journals, they found a ritual that promised to reverse the enchantment. It required a mixture of herbs, a chant in a forgotten language, and a personal item of the trapped soul. "We have to hurry," urged Lily, grabbing Emma's scarf from her bag. They gathered the necessary items and stood before the mirror, their hearts pounding. Alex led the chant, his voice shaking but determined. As they recited the ancient words, the mirror began to tremble, the symbols glowing with an otherworldly light. The shadowy figure within the mirror hissed, its form shifting and writhing. Emma's image flickered, her face contorted with fear. "Keep going," she urged, her voice faint but clear. With a final thunderous crack, the mirror shattered, sending shards of glass flying. The dark figure vanished, and Emma was thrown to the floor, gasping for breath. "Emma!" cried Lily, rushing to her side. Emma's eyes were wide with relief and terror. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching her friends. "It was trying to take me to a place of darkness. We have to get rid of it." Together, they gathered the broken pieces of the mirror and buried them deep in the woods, ensuring no one would ever fall victim to its curse again. They left the cottage the next morning, the memory of their ordeal forever etched in their minds. As they drove back to London, the friends remained silent, the weight of their experience hanging over them. They had faced an ancient evil and emerged victorious, but the cost had been high. They knew one thing for certain: some relics of the past are best left forgotten. The Whispering Glass. Samantha Walker, a writer seeking inspiration for her next novel, wandered into a quaint antique shop on the outskirts of London. The shop was filled with relics of the past, each item whispering its own story. But it was the old mirror in the corner that caught her eye. Its frame was intricately carved with symbols she couldn't quite decipher, and the glass, though aged, reflected a strangely captivating light. "This mirror," the shopkeeper said as Samantha examined it, "has a history. Many have found it inspiring." Intrigued and feeling an inexplicable connection, Samantha bought the mirror and brought it back to her flat. She placed it in her writing room, hoping it would spark her creativity. That night, as she sat at her desk, the room filled with the soft glow of her desk lamp, Samantha heard it for the first time, a faint whisper, barely audible. She glanced around, but saw nothing unusual. Shaking her head, she returned to her work. The whispers grew louder over the following days. They spoke of love, betrayal, and murder, weaving tales so vivid that Samantha found herself unable to look away from the mirror. The stories seemed to flow through her, compelling her to write them down. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, capturing every detail as the mirror whispered its secrets. One night, the whispers became more insistent. They revealed the story of a young woman, Elizabeth, who had fallen in love with a dashing but deceitful man. Betrayed and heartbroken, Elizabeth had discovered his infidelity and, in a fit of rage, murdered him. The mirror had witnessed it all, reflecting Elizabeth's anguish and guilt as she met her own tragic end. Samantha's heart pounded as she wrote, feeling Elizabeth's despair as if it were her own. She couldn't stop, couldn't look away from the mirror. The whispers demanded to be heard, their intensity growing with each passing night. As the days turned into weeks, Samantha became consumed by the stories. She neglected her friends, her family, and even her own well-being. The mirror's whispers were her only focus. One evening, while deep in the throes of another tale, she realized something chilling. The stories were not just figments of the past. They were the true events that had befallen the mirror's previous owners. Desperation clawed at her mind. She had to know more. Why were these stories being told to her? What did the mirror want? The answer came in the form of a final, terrifying whisper. Finish the story, or you will be next. Panic set in as Samantha understood the mirror's demand. It wasn't enough to write the tales. She had to complete the mirror's story, the story of all its victims, including her own. The mirror's power thrived on the tragedy it had witnessed, and now it sought to add her demise to its collection. Determined to break free, Samantha devised a plan. She would write the final chapter, but she would twist the ending. She would not succumb to the mirror's curse. Instead, she wrote of a woman who, through sheer will and cleverness, broke the cycle of horror and freed herself from the mirror's grasp. With trembling hands, she typed the last sentence and stared at the mirror. The whispers reached a deafening crescendo, then abruptly fell silent. The room was filled with an oppressive stillness. Samantha held her breath, waiting. The mirror's surface shimmered, and for a moment, she saw her reflection smile, a real, genuine smile of triumph. The oppressive aura lifted, and the room felt lighter. Samantha had won. She had broken the curse. Relieved, she carefully covered the mirror with a cloth and vowed never to look into it again. She sent it back to the antique shop with a note warning future buyers of its dark past. As she resumed her life, Samantha channeled her harrowing experience into a best-selling novel, ensuring the mirror's whispers were heard by the world, but only as fiction. Years later, Samantha often thought about the mirror and the stories it had forced her to write. She remained wary, always listening for the faintest whisper. But the mirror, now confined to a dark corner of the antique shop, lay silent, its thirst for stories temporarily sated.